Fun and free automotive advice with real-world solutions to everyday automotive problems. The Under the Hood Show is heard weekly on this and other great radio stations across the U.S. Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
With Russ Evans, this is Shannon Nordstrom, thanking you for tuning in to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show. Have a great day, and remember, PTLA.
The opinions heard on this program, based on the many years of experience of Russ and Shannon, are offered for entertainment value only and as a guide to your repair needs. No claim to repair or cause is given or implied. Always consult with your own certified technician and follow all safety procedures before attempting any repair. To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is not here this hour, but Shannon Nordstrom is.
Welcome, Hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter here to take your calls at 866-594-4150. 866-594-4150. I was running a little late on my way to the studio this morning, so you know what I did, right?
What did you do, Chris? Because I know we were dialoguing a bit before that, and you were a little nervous about the time frame, what was going on.
I just put it up against the wall and hit the gas. Went right around the outside like Ross Chastain.
Was that not something else?
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, go find the YouTube video if you haven't. Even if you're not a race fan, set the premise. I only saw the highlights because I was coming back from the Vikings game.
It's a total video game move.
Yeah, he's got basically a one lap. He needs to get a position.
Yeah. Two positions, I think.
Yeah, to get the positions, he goes on to be one of the four to have an opportunity to run for the championship this coming weekend in Phoenix.
Yeah, and he couldn't. He had to get past Denny Hamlin in front of him.
There was nowhere to go.
So he just pulled the video game move, hit full gas,
and put it against the wall,
and scraped along the wall all the way around the track. Most, the last turn and a half,
2/3 of the track, or a third of the track,
and just gunned it up against the wall and passed. The greatest thing was that he passed Denny Hamlin, the guy he had to pass, by 2 feet. I
didn't see any of the interviews afterwards. Did they interview Denny Hamlin?
I didn't see. When I turned it on, it was after the race, live, and I just heard them say, "Well, I've never seen anything like that," and I got distracted, and then I watched it later, and then I heard the radio calls. There's some great radio calls of the in-car, of the people around him going, "What was that? Are you kidding me?" And swear words, and I've never seen anything like that. So I haven't seen the actual post-race.
Do you remember when Carl Edwards tried to do that at 180 miles an hour in Kansas City?
Yes.
He just about did it, but he didn't make where he was going.
Right.
But we were there at that race, and of course my dad was in another vehicle, and he always has to beat traffic. And so we said, no, we're staying till the burnout. We're not going to go anywhere. And we're like, oh, my gosh, look at Carl Edwards. Look, what? Oh, he's going all out.
Yeah.
he just hammered it right against the wall, trying to make a last lap pass. And that's they said they figured Ross Chastain was probably at 70 or 80 miles an hour by the way the track is conformed and when he was getting across the line. But it's almost 100 miles an hour and intentionally saying, all right, I'm just going to put it against the wall.
I'm just going to go, and he did it by a third of a car length.
And even though he didn't win the race, did he smash a watermelon afterwards?
I don't know.
Isn't he the watermelon grower? Isn't he the guy that smashes a watermelon after he wins?
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us. We've got some calls coming in. Let's talk to Burl. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Burl, what can we do for you?
Good morning, gentlemen. I have a 2007 GMC Safari, and got a couple questions about it. Okay, and I've been listening to some of your delayed shows here in our market. We hear it on Saturday morning.
Sure.
And it's been talking about brakes, and it's awesome because that's what I'm working on. So they talked about digital or electronic bleeding. They use a scan tool to bleed your ABS system.
Yeah, on many of those models, and I'm Russ being gone today, he would give you more detailed explanation, but there's a sequence that you can put the analog brake modulator assembly into, and it'll just kind of self-bleed. There's a process you follow using the electronics built into it, and I believe that Safari van or Astro van, for others that are listening, has the same basic setup as a S10 Blazer of that era, a Tahoe of that era, a Suburban of that era. They all use some very similar components in those vehicles. Are you having problems with your brakes, or are you just intrigued by the whole process?
No, I had a collapsed hose line, and so I could never get them to release. What happened was it did it, and I didn't realize it. So then rotors go bad, and so I replaced the rotors, put new pads in, and it still's doing it. So my buddy said, "Oh, that sounds like collapsed hose line. You need to replace those." So I've done that, but now I'm ready to bleed, and they said, "No, you don't want to do just a regular bleed because you got to get it through that DBS system."
Well, I would recommend, and if I'm wrong on this, I apologize, but I would recommend doing your typical hydraulic bleeding first, with the system silent and not powered up or anything. And I think that majority of the times you're going to be just fine unless you have introduced a whole bunch of air into the system and it gets really contaminated with air. Typically, you can still do the normal hydraulic bleeding and it'll be fine.
Okay, well, we'll see that, because I know there's scan tools that do that process for you. It actually turns that pump on back there.
Correct.
To hear it working and stuff. So, but there's all kinds of these things, and I was wanting to know which was a good one and which one's a bad one.
Yeah, that one, you have to get into a machine that can do a lot of control functionality. Some of the ones that you buy that are, and this is just for everybody listening, that like I have one at home. I've got an OBD2 link, I think it's called, or OBD link, that it was a potential sponsor that had sent us one, and I've used it many, many times. And it's a plug-and-play Bluetooth with my iPhone, and it lets me read code, see data, but I can't command or control anything with that. And so you definitely got to step up into another level of scanner to be able to do those sort of things. And some of them you can get into and find used and be able to do those things that aren't that expensive. But for the money you may have to spend to get a scanner like that, if you are having the problem where you need to do that, if you do your work all the time, have a small fleet, whatever it might happen to be, a business with your own vehicles, it might be worth investing in. Otherwise, it might be worth just spending somebody's hours worth of time,
right.
Give them $100 or whatever the number might be to help you bleed it and move on. But if you are a do-it-yourselfer, like a lot of people listen to this show, that's the functionality you would want to look for. I know if Russ was here, he could probably give you a recommendation, but I'm just not as up on those things as he is.
Did you have another question, Burrow?
Okay. Yes, question 2. It's all-wheel drive, and it hasn't been functioning for a while, and I'm relegating this vehicle to a recreational vehicle using for hunting and fishing. But I would like to have my all-wheel drive working. And I've been looking on YouTube, and all they show is people converting them to manual four-wheel drive. Is there a repair for this?
Well, if I remember correctly on that Astro van, Safari van all-wheel drive setup, they use a similar case as, once again, like an S10 Blazer, that sort of a thing. It's a similar chassis as that. And in those systems, in that era, they had a vacuum-operated pod that ran and the diaphragm pulled and controlled the actuator on the front differential to engage the front wheels. And they would go bad often, whether it was that diaphragm or the vacuum lines going to them or whatever it might happen to be. And I remember we used to use those vehicles out in our yard here in our auto recycling facility as yard vehicles. And in the wintertime, you need four-wheel drive. And so the guys would just pull the cable and put a vice grip on it and permanently engage it in four-wheel drive with the front axle, as long as the transfer case was working. Because yours has an automatic shift transfer case, right? Button on the dash?
Nope.
Yours is full all-wheel drive. You don't have any settings at all on it.
Yep.
All right. So if your all-wheel drive transfer case is working correctly, if it's engaging the front axle and trying to put torque to it and your front wheels just aren't engaging, then the problem is up on that front differential most all the time. That's the biggest failure spot. And typically it's just, like I said, that diaphragm or actuator, and that one I believe is manual, and you should be able to manually lock that in unless there's something physically broke with the fork inside that moves to engage those gears.
Burl, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Be sure to visit our website for news, contests, and previous shows at underthehoodshow.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's time to get back under the hood with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us. Let's talk to Virgil. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Virgil, what can we do for you?
Good morning, guys. Welcome to the last day of summer. I've got a Ford F-150 that's a 2000 model, and I'm finding it increasingly difficult to find ethanol gas that's less than 15%. For whatever reason, there's the label on the pump that says, "Don't use this in vehicles that are 2000 or older." So I'm wondering if I'm stuck using that ethanol blend, well, what's it going to do to me? What are the potential problems with the vehicle?
Where do you fill with gas most of the time? Not by station name, but what state or what area are you in? Are you in the local
South
market
Dakota.
here, or are you somewhere else?
The local market,
Okay. Are you
South
in Minnesota or South Dakota?
South Dakota.
Okay. The reason I ask is because in Minnesota, you've been running the blend for a long, long time. For how long, Chris? 10 years?
More than that.
15 years?
Yeah,
And
more
didn't
than
even-
that.
And didn't even know it.
Right. It's
Just
been 10 for forever. I mean, 10%.
10%, yeah. Just to kind of put it in my terms, when they did testing for the E10 10%, they had to kind of pick a year range to say when were the majority of the vehicles a port fuel injection type setup with computer controls that were adequate to adjust for the changes in alcohol content that that'll affect slightly your it can adjust for detonation. It can adjust for the timing curve that needs to be changed just a little bit to make all those things work. And so when the publication and the testing came out, there was kind of a year range that was picked. And so within the industries, any industry, there's always a lot of battle about labeling, how they're going to label something. Whether it's the meatpacking industry or fuel pumps, it's not immune to the arguments about how to label something. And there's a faction that would say, hey, don't put anything on there. It works. And then there's other ones like, oh, people are concerned about this. We've got to note it. And you can imagine where those arguments come from and where the bias would be for some people. But when it gets down to it, the take that we have as a radio show and as a auto recycler that dismantles cars, and as Russ, if he was here, a mechanic, a certified mechanic that runs a repair shop, we're going to tell you that we don't see problems with these blends at 10 and 15% in vehicles that have the multi-port fuel injection, the tune-port fuel injection like your truck does. With that generation of truck, they updated that thing big time in 1997 with the F-150, and it became some pretty modern technology. You don't have the ability to get in as easily and do some of the testing when you get on vehicles that are pre-1995. So OBD2 is really good. If you're newer than that, that can really help, for people that want to get in and check fuel trims and just see how is this thing burning? How far off am I on getting to a danger zone for my cylinders? And our conventional wisdom is that you are not going to find yourself in trouble at that rate one bit with that truck.
Well, that's good to hear, because I looked at it and said, is this a situation where they're just covering their own to make sure that, we told you that you shouldn't do that, and something went wrong, so it's not our fault?
Well, and
or
I guess
it's something that's...
And when we talk about this, too, we do make sure and pull back a little bit, too, and say, now, if you got a small engine, then you do have to pay more attention to those volumes, because unless you have a very, very late model small engine in some boats, some motorcycles, where you can get complete computer control with a full fuel injection system, those setups can only adjust so far, and that's why most of those manufacturers will say, no, let's not go past 10%, and I would agree with that on a lot of the, you get into your chainsaws and your lawnmowers and that sort of stuff, because they just don't have the finite adjustments that come with computer controls and fuel injection.
Which, by the way, I just looked it up. Minnesota's been 10% since 2003.
That's a long time.
And the 10%, like you said, whether you wanted to or not, that hasn't been a big deal for the small engines either. I mean, I've been running E10, and obviously, in all of my lawnmowers and everything, and it's not been an issue.
Yeah, it'd be fine. And I've got just to throw this out there, I just got a new pickup. I try to trade about every 4 or 5 years. And the second tank of fuel I put in that truck, it's a 6.2-liter GM motor, and it needs premium fuel. I filled it up with E30. And I get all the octane I need.
Are you worried about the warranty?
Nope.
Okay.
No, because, Russ has done it with his own vehicle. He's put it in, and he's put the computer on it, and he's looked at the fuel trims.
Watched it.
To see what is this doing. And like he said, he's got plenty of room where he's not even close to a danger spot with that. And it runs great. It loves the octane.
Yeah. Does that help you out there, Virgil?
You bet. I was just concerned about what kind of damage I might do to the motor, because I'm planning to never get rid of the truck and keep driving until the wheels fall off.
Perfect.
You'll be fine. There'll be something else that'll cause the problem other than that.
Yeah, let's be clear.
It'll be something else.
Yeah. 866-594-4150. Let's go to Canada. Toronto, Marco's on the Under the Hood show. What can we do for you, Marco?
Hey, good day, everyone. Finally was able to find you guys so I could call in.
Well, thank
Fantastic.
you. I might be going to Toronto here at some point. I've got I'm involved in our executive committee for our trade association, so I'll be doing a little more traveling. And I know there's a meeting they always do up in that area, and I've been up in Toronto a long time ago for a leadership convention, and I have not been back. And so I was always thought that was a pretty cool city. So thanks for calling the show. What are you up to today?
How long ago are we talking? Because it has changed, unfortunately.
Okay.
Not in the best sense of the way. But anyway, 2005 GMC Simi. It's got 250,000 kilometers, so I don't know, about 180,000 miles, give or take. And it's been driving okay, shifting fine. And I had a fluid change. I did it myself. I had a filter in the back of it that I've been meaning to get to replacing. So I did that, and now my level's up to where it should be. But when it's cold, it's almost like it's losing pressure. It delays shifting, and it's kind of, the shifts are not very firm. When I took the pan out, there was obviously, I guess, clutch material on the magnet, but nothing in terms of anything else. So I'm just wondering, is this transmission on the end of its life, or what else? Is there anything else I could do?
Have you been fortunate enough to be the owner of this vehicle since it had brand new or low miles, or how long have you had it?
Yes, since new. Been in the family.
Well, 180,000 English miles and 253,000 kilometers is it is getting up to the end for a lot of times for that 4L60 transmission that's in there. And it's not that they all go bad, and if you've cared for it, they are more than capable to go to 250, 300. We've seen it, but it's not unusual for them to die between 130 to 200,000 miles. Now, having said that, have you been regularly changing that fluid throughout its life, or is this something you decided to do late in its life?
No, this is probably the second or third fluid, not flush, but fluid change, pan drop, basically, in its life. So it isn't definitely not the first time I've done it, but I haven't been up to where I guess I could be. But it never tows. Mainly the sole driver of the truck, right, without even any passengers. So, I drive it very gingerly, and it's mainly highway for the most of its life. So I don't know.
Well, we
really don't want to condemn it. Right?
No, don't condemn it. What I would recommend is just make sure the fluid type that you used was correct. Just look into that. We got to get to a bottom of an hour here, but make sure the fluid type you used was correct, and make sure that as you go through and you look at your process, that, like you said, you've done this already, make sure everything's full. But with that age, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to put a conditioner in there to help condition some of those lip seals and that are on the packs inside there in between the clutches, so it's not bypassing that fluid. And then you might want to have somebody just check the settings with the computer just to see what it's showing for pressures. They can look at each one of those pressure levels between clutches and just see what's happening and see how far out it is on its range of adjustment that it's having to make as it reaches the end of its range. And that is the danger sometimes of flushing fluid when they get to a certain age, is that you take out some of that gritty material and then all of a sudden you're not holding like you were. And so,
and at that age, it's getting to be there. So it's not like he probably can save it if it's
going to be hard. It's possible, but I think that it's more than likely it's just starting to show wear that's there regardless of what you do. But I would try a couple of those things first before I throw in the towel.
Marco, thanks very much for the call. We have to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. The phone number to reach us, 866-594-4150. You're listening to the Under the Hood Show.
Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. If you follow us on Facebook and check out our Facebook page, you can watch us do the show there. And you could win a hoodie if you go to the Under the Hood Show website, underthehoodshow.com. The hoodie giveaways are brought to you by Universal Technical Institute, who we have talked to those guys and talked about what they can do.
Yeah,
and
they're a great place, and they sponsored the hoodie giveaway. We're not giving one away today, but be listening on shows to come. You will have your opportunity. But UTI is an amazing place where you can go, campuses all across the country, technical training that can get you prepared for the industries that are emerging and that are there now, and have you have those specific skills that you need to make you job ready and sought after.
And as we get ready, we had a caller earlier mention it. The forecast for our area tomorrow calls for wintry mix. And I think when I looked last time at the locations of Universal Technical
You
Institute,
wouldn't get much wintry mix.
mostly southern. So there's that too.
Yeah, there is.
You know?
But I mean, they got careers in automotive, welding, marine. Just get on their website, UTI, Universal Technical Institute, and check out what they have to offer. We're pretty proud to be partnered with those folks and what they can do to change people's lives.
UTI.edu. Now, you wanna talk about the hoodies more too?
Well,
I mean, you can.
I've never been shy to say it.
Right. Go
You,
get
you
one.
can win one.
Yeah.
At some point, we give them away. Mm-hmm. But you can buy one anytime.
Anytime.
And they are affordable. We don't gouge you on this hoodie. Inflation has hit everything but not the hoodie.
That's right.
The hoodie price has stayed the same. And you can get it shipped right to you. Pretty toot sweet.
We have hoodie stabilization. We had a hoodie stabilization program a few years ago, and it's really holding
Yeah,
good.
HSP has worked well. And so we have got them babies available for you. And there's some really nice trucker hats, just like the one Chris is wearing today. If you're watching Facebook or the YouTube channel, he's our hat model. And we've got those available. Just got a new shipment of those in. So I've got a big chunk of them that they got in, so you can buy a hat. They're like $16 or something like that. That's a pretty affordable deal on a hat.
Good hat.
You can do the combo. You get a hat and a hoodie, T-shirt.
All set to go.
All set to go, and you can pick those up by checking out our website, underthehoodshow.com, and look for the hoodie gear right on the front page.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Dan. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Dan, what can we do for you?
Yeah, yes, sir. Thank you for letting me come on the show.
You bet.
I've got a question. I bought an 04 Jetta on an auction sale, and I kind of used it thinking it would probably be a second car for my son. Battery had to be jumped at the sale to get it running. Got it home. It kind of sat for a little bit. I put a new battery on it, fired it up, drove it over to the shop, was going to do a little tinkering on it, and went to hit the key, fire right up. As soon as you let loose of the key, it died. Okay? Fire right back up again. As soon as you let loose of the key, it dies. I can't find anything. I did go online a little bit, and somebody said if you put a new dash cluster in it, it'll cure the problem. You guys run across anything like this?
Well, do you happen to, was this like at an impound sale that you bought it, or a tow lot sale or something?
Yeah, tow lot sale.
Okay, and there are times where a lot of the cars that, and we've got great friends in those businesses, and they get a lot of towaway cars from apartment complexes where people leave and different things in different situations. It's a crazy world. But sometimes they end up with those cars because nobody pays the bill, and they've got a process they go through to get reimbursed for their charges and storage and everything. And
Yeah.
and
Sometimes it's a perfectly good car.
and other times it was parked for a reason, and there was a reason it was
Yep.
still sitting there when they left their
Right.
apartment. And so you got to really definitely buyer beware at that point. And there's a lot of times where they don't have keys, and they have to get keys made for those vehicles. And I'm not up to speed all the time on every one of them German cars, but there are a number of them that if you have a key made, they don't work at all or work correctly. And so
Okay.
can you tell by looking at that key if it's one that's lived with the car for a while or if it looks pretty fresh?
Yeah, I've got two set of keys for it, and we
Okay.
did drive it home.
Very good. Very
So
good.
it has been on the road. Yeah.
Because otherwise, just to talk about that subject for a second, there's a number of them German cars that if you don't have the original keys and you have to get it programmed, the car will get parted out a lot of times before somebody will actually put the effort into trying to put all the modules you need to put in it to get a new key sequence put into the car. So I'm just bringing that up for other people to be aware that if you have a later model German vehicle, boy, get an extra key and keep it somewhere very precious and always have that. Because as long as you have the key, you can get another one made and match frequencies and do things. But when you lose all the keys, it gets to be a problem.
We haven't done that on my daughter's Beetle yet. We should probably do that, huh?
You don't have an extra one?
No.
Get an extra one.
And I haven't told her yet.
Yeah,
I haven't
get an
said
extra one.
anything to her either yet because it would freak her out.
Now, as far as your problem goes, I'm not going to be able to speak directly to that because I mean that sounds like some of the old vehicles where you'd have a shorted out voltage regulator or something like that, or one of the sensors that it wasn't switching over from using the oil pressure sensor to the starting solenoid or whatever it might happen to be, where they were moving the power. When you're on the key, you could turn it on and get power to go through for the ignition, but then once you let off, it takes it away. That sounds like an old school problem, but with a Volkswagen, it's not. With what you read on the internet, why are they pointing towards the instrument cluster? Because I know that is one of the modules that has to communicate with the process, even on that age of car.
I can't. I only saw one thing on the internet about it, and that's what geared theirs. But I'm thinking that we're going to run a hot wire to the brain and see if we get a sensor somewhere shutting off.
Well, if you get somebody that can hook up to it.
It started once, and I drove it up to the shop.
Yeah.
Shut it off. Went to start it again. It'll pop right off.
The first thing I would do is give it a good old-fashioned inspection of all that wiring up around the battery, everything that's going to the ignition coils. I would look over all that wiring just to make sure there's not something that's been messed with. Because that's another thing when you get into a tow lot or an impound sale. There's plenty of people poking around on those cars and looking at them and sometimes getting too close to them. But just to make sure that somebody hadn't pulled a wire loose or something that was just barely touching and now it's not, just give it a good old physical inspection. And maybe, have you tried one of the other keys just to see if anything changed?
Yeah, I have.
Nothing different?
It's got two of those flip-out keys, that
Yep.
That you can, when you stick it in your pocket, you can hide the keys.
Well, if you've got two of them, it's definitely probably the originals or somebody that had them because they don't make two keys when they make one. They make one to get the job done.
Right.
And that would be definitely something there. But somebody should be able to, that car's new enough that they can hook a scanner to it and they'll be able to see pretty easily what is being pulled away, what's not there when that key is shut off, if they watch it during that sequence, and maybe save you a little bit of playing around when you get to that point if your physical inspection doesn't help.
Dan, thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. What's caught your attention in the automotive world?
The number of people that have called me in the last 2 weeks, our company in the last 2 weeks, that have bought cars that they thought were going to be bargains that were German cars, and they just want to get rid of them.
Right.
I mean, seriously, if you're looking at a car in a price range, and I don't want to scare anybody, but if you are going to be one that does a lot of your own work, there are certain things that you get into some of the what I'm going to call newer, older German cars.
Fair enough.
Because
2000 to 2000.
Well, you start getting into some of the BMWs in 05, 6, 7. You get into an older Range Rover, an older Lexus, and I've got some experience with one of them. You start getting into some early advent high-end electronics that are not quite as easy for people to follow, and it was kind of a jumping off point for a lot of shops before they said, you know what, I just don't want to do that anymore. I'm gonna work with this stuff. And now a lot of it has became in more full circle where they use a lot of the same common technologies and same module manufacturers, but their gateways and the ways that you communicate with them are much more restrictive, and it can be pretty easy to be looking at a repair that, oh my gosh, I paid $2,500 for this car and it's going to cost me $1,500 just to kind of get close.
Right.
Then that gets hard.
We've talked about this, and I can't remember the kind of range I was given. But on even just getting that second key for the Volkswagen, it's not $12 or even $60 to get the extra key made, right?
There's getting to be more places that can match and duplicate a key if you have it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the locksmiths, I was just talking, Fred the Fixer is a local place. They've been around for a while. They were telling me that the one younger generation, the son there, is really getting into the late model stuff.
Okay.
And kind of getting them back up to speed. We got a gentleman that comes out to our place here too, Mike, that he's got technology that allows him to duplicate some keys, and he's licensed and in the right areas to do those sort of things. But you're still going to spend, like when I did that Range Rover second key, I had to spend, I think it was close to $300
Right.
to get a key.
And
but if
now-
I wouldn't have had all the keys,
Yeah,
then I'm up against like thousands of dollars
Right.
and a dealer-only situation to get that thing going again.
Right. And if you lose, it's not cheap to get the second key, but if you lose the only key, we're talking.
Yeah, thousands and thousands of dollars in a dealer-only situation where they've got to replace modules and kind of basically start with a new pack.
Mm-hmm.
Because when they make a lot of those cars, they make a certain number of keys available
That you
and
can
for the life of the car.
get, like, you have to send away
Yeah,
to
I'd
the.
like to see the storage area.
Is it just one big pegboard with nails
Yeah.
on it? You know? Oh, you got 6,000 nails in this board, and the keys are hanging there.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a little more built on demand of some sort.
You
by
think so?
that, but it's got to. It's got to be.
It's got to be,
Yeah.
except you kind of are picturing the big board, aren't you?
Yeah, yep, for sure.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show. 866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us. When we come back, we want to hear from you.
Make a radio appointment each week to hear the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show.
The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturdivants. 866-594-4150. What has caught your attention in the automotive news world
Oh,
outside of your
a
purview?
couple of things. I was doing some research last night because some things you just need to know. And we've got a Tesla Model 3 that we've got that isn't, in my eyes, anywhere close to a total loss as far as the damage that it has.
Is that
The white one out front that you see
when you
came-
say in your eyes?
No, just look, just understanding.
No, I know, but here's what I'm asking you.
Okay.
In other vehicles, you know that.
I'd look at it and say, I don't think this should be fixed.
Right. So, but in this case,
I can look at it and say, this car should be fixed.
But you also might be wrong, right? In this case, with the Tesla.
Yeah, because of other market circumstances that are out of my control.
That's exactly what I mean. Like the Range Rover, you thought it could be fixed.
Yeah, and then
You
you
were
find out that you can't buy the parts.
Which is not true, but
Yeah.
it was not
I
the
drove that this week, that 06, for 3 days.
it was not the project you thought it was when you started.
Bigger project.
Right.
But so we've got this Tesla, and it's a beautiful car. It's a dual motor, long range, $70,000-$80,000 car. The insurance company had it estimated here in our market by a very qualified repair shop, came up with an estimate of like $18,000 on this almost $80,000 car. A lot of damage, but in today's standards, it just costs money to do things. But in order to get the repair authorized, they needed to bring it to an authorized Tesla repair facility, which for us in our area, the closest one was Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay.
So they brought the car down there and had the estimate written. And with the new estimate written by the authorized repair facility, we started getting closer to $40,000 on the estimate.
Okay.
They had some more extensive things that they wanted to do to the car.
Now,
I, in all fairness, which I will always try to keep an open mind about things, when you start talking about a car that can do autonomous things, you start talking about a car that has some very sophisticated electrical systems, I get the concern completely.
and to be also fair, the same could happen with any late model vehicle.
Our BMW, if it got into an accident like that, that's a gas-powered engine, an ICE vehicle, that would be extremely
the amount that you could get it
unique.
done for
Yeah.
versus bringing it to the dealer if it had to be.
The insurance company involved reached out to us and said, you know what, we're thinking that we might be better served here to check out and get this person money for another car and, not try to be in the middle of this repair. We said, all right, we'll give you a salvage bid on it. Here's what we'll pay for it. And so we jumped in and so we're still, because I wanted to learn. Sometimes learning costs money, and sometimes you got to buy your way into school.
Right.
In this case, we bought our way into school. So I hadn't done a lot of research, and what I did find out last night is that
Is that a good negotiating tactic when I bring my car to you? When you give me an offer and I go, well, you could learn about this 86.
No, because we've learned everything by then.
Impala.
Yeah,
okay.
We know at that point.
Okay, just
Chris.
check.
We know at that point. So what I learned, though, is somebody had told me some things, and I am not one to take what I hear the first time as the gospel. Because way too many times in my life, when I've gotten into the second question, as the question behind the question, or just going a couple layers deeper, I find out what I was told was not only untrue, it wasn't even close to true. And the common knowledge that a bunch of people had was not right.
Right.
And that is what makes the difference in this world sometimes, if the people that are willing to take another step and be able to just pause, not react, and say, all right, what do we got to do here? But in this case, I hadn't done the research yet. But I found out that with a salvage title, so once that vehicle got into the insurance company's name and we bought it and gave it a salvage title, that Tesla will no longer support using that vehicle on the supercharger network or any fast charging network.
They won't
You cannot
support it, or it cannot
will
be
not
done.
work.
Okay.
It will not work. They said it might work for a while, but once the databases catch up with each other, and I got into a blog, and I was like in the 7th layer of blog hell by the time I was catching up to blog posts from, I don't care about a blog post from 2019.
Right.
I want to read the blog posts from 2022 and see what people are saying now. And there was a point where people were all excited that had salvage title Teslas because they had opened up and all of a sudden they could charge them again on the supercharger network. And then there was a bunch of stories about people that had bought Teslas, not knowing they had been repaired in other states. Somebody did it out of pocket. Finally caught up with another state that did a history on it.
Mm-hmm.
They deemed it a total loss by their records, and the database changed because of the accident history. Accident history wasn't documented with Tesla, and all of a sudden they're traveling across the country with this car and can no longer charge it.
Mm-hmm.
At a public fast charger, supercharger type setup. Now you can still put your charger in and plug it in at your house for the long charge and use it. And there's other functions that they say get cut off. But that's something that I was working on trying to figure out if there's a way around that. And there's people out there that kind of on the quiet, you can say they're jailbreaking them and they're locking them up basically to say, hey, let's just leave this computer right where it's at. Let's not let it have any updates and let this car be as it is.
Which we do all the time. And I mean, we have computers in here that we're just like, this works.
But as I looked at that situation and I was trying to just think through it, learn, understand it, I'm like, okay. In most states, a salvage title vehicle, and don't get me wrong here, this is a small group of people that want to do this, but it's a pretty big business.
Mm-hmm.
And most states will have some sort of a inspection system for VIN numbers and do different things so that you can get that vehicle to a rebuilt status to be able to use it on the road. In South Dakota, we can drive a salvage vehicle on the road. And there was a number of people in those blog posts also that have went into Tesla dealers, and Tesla had told them, well, if you pay us those $600, $800, they do basically a high voltage assessment of your vehicle.
Okay.
To make sure that the charging systems are all correct, intact, not a problem for their network. Then they give you like a clean bill of health on your charging system. And they were getting told this by a lot of the dealer repair facilities. And then 6 months later, they still got their supercharger access taken off because the title caught up with the database. So there's people, of course, talking about on the blog posts, legal action and this.
Sure.
And Tesla, for their purpose, they're kind of like Apple. You can't talk to them. You send in help screens. You're driving a phone. in a sense, the way everything works. And so there's a lot of people that are wondering about, okay, what's going to happen with brand loyalty? Because there is a lot of people that may start with a salvage vehicle and fix it up, understand what they're up against, be well aware of what they're doing, keep it at a lower cost point, and then their next car might be a brand new one.
Right.
But maybe not if they don't get any access to it. So it'll be interesting to watch how this all unfolds. That's something that I learned this week that I just hadn't taken the time to look it up yet.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Bob. You're on the Under the Hood Show, Bob. What can we do for you?
I got a 2007 Colorado four-cylinder pickup with 31,000 miles on it. And when it sits all winter or if it's cold, it starts up in a half a turn. Or if the temperature gauge is a little under a half, no problem. The only time I have it's got to turn 8 revolutions to start it is if I drive it a mile and shut it off and it hasn't warmed up very much, then I have a longer starting procedure. It does start, but it doesn't kick off like it when it's cold. You have any idea what would be causing that?
Makes you a bit nervous, I bet.
Well, yeah, it does. It always starts, but if you run it up to operating temperature, you don't have any problem, or half on the temperature gauge, no problem whatsoever. It's if I drive a mile to the grocery store, I shut it off, and then come back out. You got to crank it about 7-8 times to get it to go.
And am I going to make an assumption here, but I'll just ask, is this thing showing no check engine lights, no trouble codes whatsoever, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so if you're not showing any trouble codes, you're going to have somebody actually have a scanner connected to it when it duplicates this so they can see why it's not firing. Did it lose crank signal for a little bit for some reason under those circumstances? Is the crankshaft position sensor not sending the right signal? Is this thing for some reason under those circumstances losing fuel pressure? With 31,000 miles, you wouldn't think that, but you do have a lot of age against it. That a but it sounds like, boy, that's tight and healthy to hold that fuel up there for that quick cold start. But also gives me an indication when it starts that quickly, when it's cold and sitting, that it's really working good with a rich fuel mixture, but not working as good when it gets into the finite settings of OBD2. So let's dig a little deeper on that.
That'll do it for this hour of the Under the Hood Show. Hour 2 is coming up.
You're listening to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show with the Motor Medics, Shannon Nordstrom and Russ the Super Tech Evans. Shannon is an ASE engine and parts specialist, and Russ is an ASE Master certified technician with extensive factory drivability training. Join the Motor Medics for fun and free automotive advice with real-world solutions to everyday automotive problems. The Under the Hood Show is heard weekly on this and other great radio stations across the U.S. Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
With Russ Evans, this is Shannon Nordstrom, thanking you for tuning in to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show. Have a great day, and remember, PTLA.
The opinions heard on this program, based on the many years of experience of Russ and Shannon, are offered for entertainment value only and as a guide to your repair needs. No claim to repair or cause is given or implied. Always consult with your own certified technician and follow all safety procedures before attempting any repair. To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is not here this hour. Shannon Nordstrom is.
Oh, welcome, Hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up. And, yeah, Russ had something to come up this morning here, and so it was a last-minute thing to scramble, and behind the scenes there was a little bit of Russ coaching me how to get everything turned on, Chris making a drive to get here on time, producer Doug getting in studio just to make sure he had his end ready to go, and we were on the edge of calling it.
It was on the edge, yeah.
Of calling it and saying we're going to do a best of show, and I held us together. I said we're not
handled
doing that.
this all the way, yeah.
I said we're not doing that. I said we're gonna get this thing going.
866-594-4150. That's the phone number to reach us. And with Russ not here, that's one less person to go to for news and stuff. So if you've thought about calling, it's a good time to do it because we'll get some stuff done here.
Yeah, exactly. We'll make some stuff happen. I want to make sure and give a shout out to Larry from New York. Larry was in our studio here this week. He is a longtime listener. Found us out there in New York. And he is a retired mill worker. He and his nurse wife moved here from New York.
Okay.
Their daughter had moved out of New York before them, and they wanted to get out of New York too, and they now are in T, South Dakota here. And just very happy to be here. And he's an early retiree, worked his butt off his whole life, it sounds like, and then him and some others ended up buying the company that they were working for.
Okay.
And just a good, hard-working story. And, Larry, I enjoyed talking with you. Glad you were here. We stopped in here, and I just had a few minutes, and I showed him the studio, and we talked for a little bit. But thanks for stopping in, Larry. I appreciate that. It meant a lot to me.
866-594-4150. The problem with this morning, coming into the show.
Just one problem?
The problem coming into the show.
The problem.
Yeah. Was I had enough time that, or I should say, it was going to be close, and you were fixing things. You were getting stuff ready. So I was right in between just being close on time, but not close enough that I had to really step on it, you know? I mean, I just...
Did you realize that I chose to call you?
No.
Instead of texting you?
No. Oh, well, yeah, you did call. Wait a minute. I answered, didn't I?
You did. It took a little bit.
Weird.
But
That's
you know,
weird.
that was to calm you.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That was intentional versus a text. Because I think if I would have texted and said got it, you wouldn't have believed me.
Well, and it was one of those things, too, where it came up last minute, and when it came up, I was already getting close to time, and then I had to push to get it
Do you want to know
ready.
what I thought?
What's that?
I thought that you were close on time, and you were looking, boy, I'm going to take the first excuse I can get not to do this.
It was tied between let's not do it versus maybe I should really step on it and make some hay here.
Ross Chastain it.
Yeah, before the wintry mix comes.
Then I think you said there was a text involved somewhere about following a high patrolman.
Yeah.
So he limited your ability to be a little more aggressive.
And I didn't have to anyways, but it
you
worked
walked
out.
in 5 to 7 minutes early.
I was about on time. I mean, it was
so it was a lot to do about nothing. Lot to do about nothing.
866-594-4150. All right, I told you I had
I'll put my article away. Yes.
$1 million idea.
And we're going to share it on the air again?
Yeah, because it's a $0 idea, I'm realizing. But it's a great idea. And here's the thing, it can be done. Most of the ideas I've come up with have either been done or my ideas are things like, we should find a better way to do that. And that's it. That's the idea is to someone to solve it. That's just the idea.
I'm heartbroken all the time to think I've solved the world's problems, and then I look up the internet and say, oh, it's already solved.
Oh, I could buy that for 18 cents.
That
literally has happened where we've gone, that's a great idea. You should make those. And then we look up and they're 49 cents.
And you can buy 1,000 of them.
Yeah, you can get a gross of them for $8, and it'll be here tomorrow.
we were down in Arizona visiting our daughter, and it was off time. And so my son, a bunch of us.
She's in Supermax, right? Prison. She's at the federal, isn't she? No. You can only get to go down 2 days a year. She's in college now.
Yeah. And so we're down there, and it was an off day, and we were hanging out. And we were just kind of relaxing around a pool at a house we had rented, and we were going to get some food, and we were caught between, do we get ingredients and make something?
Yeah.
Do we order these different brands that we just don't always get where we live? Mm-hmm. You know where I'm at on this.
Yeah.
And suddenly, my son has this amazing idea that why can't you order the ingredients for your meals and have them delivered to you with exactly what you need to make the meal that you want? Uh-huh. This was a totally original idea to him. Mm-hmm. He was like, oh, my God, this is going to be – we're going all in on this. He goes, sell the salvage yard. We're going all in on this. Then we found Instacart.
Yeah. I remember inventing Uber. And we went, someone should do that. And they went, yeah, it's Uber. Oh, okay. That's a good idea.
So your idea.
I talked about this years ago, 15 years ago. This was my idea. They should have a transmission gear for the car wash. So when you're going out of the car wash, maybe it's a drive-through car wash, or you're just going out the dryer.
So a much slower version of valet mode.
Right. You're going.
No, actually, you're in the car yet, though.
You're going through the dryer. And the timer comes up, and you're trying to get the whole car dry, and
But it shouldn't be in gear at that point.
Yeah. When you're just in a car wash, you're not going through some fancy car wash.
It's not propelling you.
You're
not
at the gas station. Yeah.
You're not on, as I consider it, like a conveyor belt.
Yeah. It says go pull out and go. You got the dryer.
You know what those remind me of when I'm in those car washes that you have to get on the right place and they're taking you through.
Yeah.
The manure auger we used to have in the dairy barn.
Exactly.
It was a chain link, and it hauled the manure outside into the manure wagon. When I get into a car wash and it's moving me along, clunk, 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 I think I'm on the manure spreader. I'm going to end up in the end of the manure spreader. But that's a whole other story. All right, so
this is when you're at the car wash where you park, it washes, and then you have to pull out in the dryer. I always said they should make a gear so you're timed, so you don't have to stop and then you leave and you go, I think I might have missed the last quarter part. It's a great idea. And here's here's what we can do. Every electric vehicle could do this with an over-the-air update. It's called car wash mode. And you just pick on your car the amount of time that the dryer goes. 60 seconds or 90 seconds. Depends where you go. And your car, because the car can, if it's got that in it, if it's got that mode where it can power itself, it just goes one car length in that amount of time.
So you pull out just as the dryer
right
ends.
To the dryer, and you hit car wash mode, and it goes one car length in 60 seconds. How hard would that be to set up if you had a Tesla? Not hard at all.
Oh, the programmers could figure it out. And I'm thinking
they could do it in a second.
If Elon's not busy with Twitter, he may be listening today.
Yeah.
And then he might heard my comments in an earlier show about helping out the salvage vehicle folks.
Right.
A little brand loyalty build.
Yeah.
And the car wash mode. I mean, they've got a Christmas mode in there that puts the car on display like a Christmas light display. And that's pretty cool.
The Hummer's got the crab mode where it turns and it goes slowly itself, right?
Yeah.
They could do that. They could do car wash mode in a heartbeat.
The Bronco's got trail mode.
Exactly. There you go. It could be done so easily.
Well, it may not be as crazy as you think, but I don't think it's going to be top of the list.
I bet we see it. I just wish there were a way that
you could track it.
Or I could do it, and It would be something we could do. We could, the Under the Hood show. We could program it. Let's get Russ on that. Maybe we can put a chip in.
Russ, we got to hack it.
We got to hack it.
We got to put a chip in the car, or Russ?
Good question.
I think
Both.
he's already got a chip.
Got to start with one
Yeah.
and then get to the
He
other.
might need an extra chip.
866-594-4150. Paul, we're going to get to you right after the break on the Under the Hood show.
Get your planner out right now and schedule your next radio appointment with the Motor Medics.
Eight 866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's talk to Paul. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Paul, what can we do for you?
Good morning. I've got a 06 Nissan Infiniti QX56, and it's pretty much the same as a Armada, I believe. Anyway, I've got my gauge cluster is all haywire, fuel gauge and tach, and even the temperature gauge doesn't work. Lights flicker. The only thing that works consistently is the speedometer. And I was wondering how I can make an attack on that, or what my solution is.
You described your vehicle as a Nissan Infiniti. You don't do that like with your buddies, do you? You say you drive an Infiniti, don't you?
Well, sometimes I actually say I've got a Datsun Infiniti, so it goes deeper than that. I go way back with this company.
That's classic. I love that.
They should have called the new Z. They should have called it a Datsun.
The commercials that they're running, and I hear them on Pandora, and I've seen them on TV or videos somewhere, but they're kind of going through the lineage of Datsun with their off-road adventers, and they're going.
I've seen it. Yeah.
That's a good commercial. And
is it where they?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And the classic, the Nissan hardbody, what was it, red and white or blue, or it was that. I remember seeing those things, and I love that commercial. It just kind of talks about their lineage and their ability to be on top of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it really shows
It
staying
touches
power.
my soul. Oh yeah.
What'd you say? It touched his soul. Well, in this case, I think they made a crappy
yeah.
instrument cluster.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be my first hunch when you have that many things that are acting up. You might just try removing it and checking the connections on the back. You're getting old enough that you could get some of that stuff. It'd be good to take the connection apart, reseat it, inspect it, see what you got going on, see if anything changes. It's new enough where you can hook a scanner to it and see what those readings actually are on the things that are giving you erroneous readings. And if the scanner is showing you the right information, but yet the cluster is displaying the wrong information, highest odds are it's the cluster that's the problem. There is intermediate modules in a lot of cars that will go between the sensor inputs, like a body control module, and then to the cluster. But I think on that one there, if you check it, you're going to be most likely looking at the cluster being the problem. So
What about the one thing working? Is that any sort of...
the speedometer is a little more, I don't know. They keep that in most vehicles as an independent circuit within
as
the cluster.
straightforward as they can. Just
Because sometimes you can have a cluster that'll fail and the rest of the cluster won't fail.
Okay.
Like we have GM product that we'll talk about with the odometer quits working or the speedometer quits working or just the information center within the speedometer will quit working, but the rest of it's all going good. And so it just seems like they keep that, and it might be maybe there's some safety reasons they have to do that. I don't know. But it seems like that circuit is many times kind of on its own within the circuitry of the cluster.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would get it apart and give it a good tap or two. And
Is it hard
check.
to open that up?
No, I don't. When we dismantle vehicles, there are not many that when our dismantlers look at the times that it takes to do things, that the instrument cluster isn't an operation that is less than a half hour on a high majority of the vehicles. And sometimes it's a little bit challenging just trying to figure out how to get the exoskeleton of trim off around it to get at it. And
if you're not used to it, it can be nerve-wracking
yeah, because
for
you got to
sure.
pull a little harder than you think sometimes. So
Yeah.
a lot of times you can find a YouTube video of somebody that is doing a modification to the vehicle, like for a stereo or for a navigation set or something like that. And then at that point, you can see how they took things apart, even though that's not what you're looking to do. And you can see how it comes apart to get at the cluster. And sometimes there's somebody who just flat out puts a video up of them pulling the instrument cluster out of their QX56 because they want to show everybody how smart they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad they do it.
You should start a camera there, Paul, as you're doing it.
Yep, get your own channel.
Yep. 866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here. Let's talk to Jim in California. Jim, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Hey, good to talk to you guys. Listening for a long time and appreciate the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. I've got a 2005 Ford F-350. We talked about it a couple of years ago when I had to replace the power booster and the master cylinder on it. But I've got a different leak this time coming off the back of this 6-liter diesel. And it's a slow leak. It's not the rear main seal because, unfortunately, I've had to rebuild the transmission, so that was all replaced. Is there anything else on the back of that engine, like maybe an oil pressure fender, seal or something simpler that I might be able to dig into?
Well, there is, I believe, a high-pressure oil line that crosses the back of that engine that is important. And they can start to seep a little bit, and then that oil will run down the backside of the engine and end up in the same areas as if you had a rear main seal out. And if that is it's kind of a bugger to get at, but that is a common place. And, of course, with that engine, that oil pressure system's it's important in every vehicle, but very important because you need that high-pressure oil system working correctly, and you don't want to take a risk of something bursting because it'll stop you in your tracks because it'll stop the fuel injection and diesel fuel injection from working and everything with that Huey system. But you definitely could look in that area, and I'm sure there again, if you look online for just the I can't remember what that crossover pipe is, but it's a high-pressure line that crosses across the back of the engine there, and there is definitely oil. If it's engine oil that you're finding when you check for what fluid it is.
Mm-hmm.
It is engine oil. Okay, yeah, and also back sides of the valve covers, they can seep and leak and eventually work their way to the bottom. So you might just check that area too. But I know when they do a lot of replacement at our shop on those engines, they try to reseal everything, and there are times where that high pressure line in the back needs to be replaced, and it's something that is just starting to seep, and you definitely want to replace if it's starting to leak.
Yeah, and there's no magic potion for that, right?
I don't think so, because a lot of times they start leaking at their seams where they're put together, and there's other times it can be a fitting if something's been apart, and you can check that. If they've had that apart and had to break some of those lines apart to get repairs done. Always go back. It's always good to go back and retrace the steps of where you've been, what you've done.
Absolutely, yeah.
And see if there's anything there that needs a little more snug.
Jim, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. Let's go to New Hampshire and talk to Ethan. You're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you, Ethan?
Hi, guys. Thanks for taking my call. Long-time listener. Glad I finally got a chance to call in.
Us too.
I've got a 2001 Tacoma, and what I've traced it back to, as best I can think for my problem, is an EGR valve sticking. I get a little bit of bucking, almost like a misfire under severe load, and I was wondering how big of a pain is that job to do to pull that out and check it and possibly replace it.
Is that one a 2.7 V6 or is it the 4-cylinder? No, not the 2.7's a 4-cylinder, right?
It's a 2.7 4-cylinder. Yep.
Yes. And is that EGR? Have they got that integrated with other things in that line, or is it just when you look online and look at your diagrams, does it look easy to do? Because usually that's what I do is I'll look online and say, that doesn't look so bad. I'll find a part diagram, just look on the internet and see. And a lot of times we'll tell people too is if you can go, for people in cities, they go to their local library and they can get online and find a repair manual and just see what it says for hours of operation to do it. And if you look it up and it says 5.5 hours, you may want to run if you're not super skilled. But if it says 0.7, you're like, oh, this is less than an hour. That's not so bad.
Right.
And you can kind of determine those things. I don't have the exact knowledge on that particular one, how long it takes, but most of the things we see on those 4-cylinders in the dismantling side of things are quite easy to access because there's a fair amount of room in that engine bay and working around the engine when that's mounted, even in the smaller chassis of the Tacoma.
To be totally honest, I haven't looked at that yet. I'm currently doing a head gasket job on a Subaru and replacing the oil pan and transmission.
Oh my goodness! If you're doing that, this EGR valve on this Tacoma is going to be a walk in the park.
Cool. One more question. I do have a parts truck for this vehicle, and I'm turning it into an Overlander. I wanted to get the LC Engineering 8 PSI supercharger for it, and my plan is to rebuild the parts truck engine so that everything's healthy when that goes on. Is there anything particular I need to look for when getting into that engine that you're aware of?
Well, our history with those engines is they are extremely tough. They hold up, they run. We get them in with just tons of miles on them, and they sound good. They still run well. I would just make sure when I get into that kit that I make sure if there's any special oil lines that they want to add, any fittings that need to be a certain diameter for lubrication, so that whatever you add on, that you get the right capacity of fluid, so you don't cut yourself short on what the factory stuff is supposed to be. I think that TRD makes kits that you can buy for a lot of those vehicles right through their own catalogs, because we've had some vehicles come in that had the TRD kits on them. And so just make sure if you're going to buy one off eBay or find something used or whatever that you get everything so that you're not short. And then especially online, you can usually find the installation manuals. Usually there's a PDF you can download somewhere, even right off the factory websites if that stuff's not available, and follow it to T. Because the biggest thing we see is people don't get the right capacities after they've added on accessories, and then they've run themselves short on fluids.
Ethan, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. When we come back, we want to hear from you.
Prepare to learn something. You're going under the hood.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. If you follow us on Facebook, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel and go to the Under the Hood Show website and join the Hoodie Fan Club, you could win a hoodie courtesy of our friends at Universal Technical Institute, who are, if you haven't looked at their website and seen the things that you can learn when you go there, you should go do it. uti.edu.
You bet. Great opportunity to get a very, very specific career that they'll give you the knowledge to be job ready, and people bidding on your services probably. Seriously, with the careers that they have available in great campuses all across the United States in great locations. uti.edu. They're our partners, and they sponsor the hoodie giveaway. Don't have any hoodie to give away today, but you can still go buy one at the website, underthehoodshow.com. They're for sale.
I did notice the locations. There's no terrible ones. It's not
that
like
must be by design.
I think so. It's not like you go there and go, I wouldn't go there. And every one of them, you're like, oh, that sounds nice. Yeah. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Mike. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Mike, what can we do for you?
Hi. Yes, I've got a 2000 Crown Vic 4.6. I put it away, I'm not sure, 2 or 3 years ago, shed, and went to try to start it, and it won't start. I'm not getting fuel, it'll crank, maybe fire once, but that's it. I had filled the tank before I parked it. The fuel pump on it was due shortly before I parked it also. I can hear the sounds like fuel pump cycle and then shuts off. Try to start.
Where you parked it at, what was the environment like that it was parked in?
It was in a shed. Yeah, it was on cement, dry, spot.
Temperature controlled, rodent control.
Rodent control, yep, but not temperature.
Okay. Well, that's one thing we just always, you hate to even bring it up, but you can get on some of these vehicles, and Ford seems, and Mopar seem to be fairly susceptible that they get some wires that the mice like to chew on. Some of those used, and this is old enough, it's not the case, I'm just saying it for other listeners, that they used a soy-based product to coat the wires with, and they must be tastier than the other ones. And we've seen some pretty impressive displays of teeth sharpening that cause people a lot of problems on their vehicles. But assuming that you've looked it over and you don't see anything like that, one thing that just is totally out of the blue is, Ford's got an impact shutoff switch that protects the vehicle on an accident, that sort of thing. And I've seen those pop loose every once in a while, and I don't know why they do it, and there hasn't been an event of any sort. And they used to always put them up underneath kind of like the passenger kick panel down on the floor. They'd have a spot, and sometimes they had them in the trunk. And it was just a little safety switch that would kill the fuel on the vehicle. Now, but the fact that you say you hear it cycling makes me think it's probably not that, but I just want to throw that out there for some people that have had Ford products, Lincoln products that won't start in those eras. That was a very common thing we used to run across at the dismantling facility here. When you go to start it, is it doing its normal cycling of the check engine light that you would normally see?
Yes.
And it's no fire in the hole whatsoever?
On occasion, sometimes it'll fire and maybe run for, the first time I started, it ran for maybe 5-6 seconds. And after that, I go to try it, it'll maybe fire, but that's about it, or maybe fire and run about a second. Flips again.
Well, are you, you sound like you're a hands-on, kind of a handy person a little bit.
There's that fuel rail, isn't there?
There's a Schrader valve on that rail that can tell you if you're getting that's where you would normally hook up a pressure gauge. You can find out if you're getting pressure there. It's a Schrader valve just like in a tire. And you got to be careful because when you push it in, if you have pressure, it's going to spray fuel. So it's dangerous. But you can check there to see if you have pressure at that rail when it's not starting. That's just a simple little thing that you can do, but just be aware that it's going to spray fuel. If it is, everything's working correct in the fuel, you're going to have some spray there. So shield with your hand or put a rag over it or whatever you got to do there to make sure you don't have a problem. But checking that for fuel and making sure that's okay. Otherwise, I was going to say you could just get some brake cleaner and just give it a shot with the air cleaner horn pulled back and just see if it fires. And it could quickly tell you whether it's fuel or not. Because then after that, you got to dig a little bit deeper to find out why you're not getting crank signal. Maybe it's a cam signal. And that's going to require some diagnostics that if you don't have a scanner, you're going to have to get somebody else involved.
Mike, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Jay. You're on the End of the Hood Show. Jay, what can we do for you?
Well, first-time caller, long-time listener. I just bought a used Jeep Liberty, and I also found a trailer hitch that I would like to install on it, but it's from a 2005, so I'm trying to figure out if that's interchangeable between a 05 and a 12 Jeep Liberty. I don't know how to figure that out.
Well, I tell you what,
zip ties. Just you got to have a bunch.
You need the real heavy zip ties, those fat ones.
Yeah.
The ones that you look at like, why do they even make a zip tie that big?
Shouldn't you be doing something more? If this is yours.
Yeah. No, that beside that nonsense, Chris.
I don't think you had to point that out. I think we all knew.
I did have to point that out. It was worth talking about. What I will do a lot is I will cheat. And I will go on to the website of a manufacturer of trailer hitches, and I will act like I'm trying to buy one, and I will look at the part numbers and see what range of years use the same part number in their catalog. And that is one way that I've looked to see, what works and what doesn't. Now, I'm just trying to remember. I was thinking like in 2010 or 11, somewhere in there, that Liberty got a refresh, and it's a substantially different vehicle than the earlier generation of that vehicle. Does yours
That's
look
kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, yours probably looks a lot more modern than the 05 that somebody has the hitch off of, I would guess.
Yep.
They've got some more rounded corners.
It doesn't have a hitch at all, but I understand that they've got whatever threaded holes anyway for like a welded nut on the inside to mount them right up if they are the right year.
Well, the one thing that you got to do is just make sure on that vehicle that you understand what your towing rating is and what you have to do to hook that up. Because if you want to put a hitch on there just for hauling a bike or some sort of an apparatus that you use the receiver hole for, which is very common, knock yourself out. But when you go to start wiring a hitch on one of those Jeeps, you got to make sure that you get the adapter kit for the wiring, because the stuff that's back there from the factory is not the strength that you need for resistance, capability of the circuit to handle the additional lighting of a trailer.
Yeah, just tapping in now can be an issue.
You got to make sure you understand that you're getting hooked up correctly. That's very common on a lot of the smaller mid-sized Jeeps, even the Cherokees and Grand Cherokees, that you've got to make sure you get the right adapter. Now, a lot of trucks, they wire that baby right from the factory with separate circuits for turn signals and brakes and trailer brakes and all this stuff.
Sure.
They're not doing that on a Jeep Liberty. And so, like I said, I would recommend having yourself go, and if you're not going to do it yourself or don't normally do that kind of stuff, have somebody help you and just spec it out like you're trying to buy one and see what they're trying to sell you. And check a couple different websites. U-Haul sells hitches. There's other manufacturers that do. And you might end up buying one from them, so it doesn't hurt to go to their website. You need to know where that's at.
Mm-hmm.
We, at our place, do sell a number of hitches that we unbolt off of vehicles, and other recyclers do also. But I'm going to say this once again, you got to make sure you get everything. And we always are challenging our dismantlers to make sure that they dismantle everything.
Right.
To make sure if there is a power adapter that they save it. If there is bolts that are longer because they have to go through a bracket and then into the frame, that they save those bolts because they're probably different, those fasteners. We really challenge them to try to make sure they save everything and bag it up and show it in our pictures so that we know what you're going to get. Because sometimes buying a hitch without the stuff that goes with it, like on the Facebook Marketplace, and then you got to go buy the stuff to add on to it, you might as well just have bought a new hitch.
Right.
And so that's just some advice that I would give to anybody that's out there looking marketplace. Our partners at Car Dash Part, plenty of people are going to have hitches for sale. There again, look for the ones with the pictures. Look for the one that shows what you're going to get. Actually,
it is kind of every time I've looked,
my hunch is that hitch doesn't fit. That's to answer your question.
It's remarkable to me how affordable having a hitch put on is the right way. If you go to the right place,
it often amazes me. You're exactly right, because that's a high liability factor. There's a lot of shops that don't even do it anymore. But the people that are in that game of hitches, and they are confident in what they have, the catalogs, the brands, and what they have, they do it pretty efficiently.
866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Be sure to visit our website for news, contests, and previous shows at underthehoodshow.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's time to get back under the hood with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. One of the comments coming in on chat was that Tesla already has a car wash mode, and it folds the mirrors in and puts it in neutral. And I replied and said, see, I'm a genius. It's a great idea. They just need to update it now and have a dryer mode.
Yeah, they didn't have the same light bulb go off that you did.
No, this is
different.
This is brilliant.
Different light bulb.
Another great idea from Chris Carter at the Under the Hood Show. Let's talk to Steve. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Steve, what can I do for you?
Hi, how y'all doing today?
Fantastic, Steve.
I purchased a 2006 Pontiac Montana minivan. The lady that I purchased it from told me it had a bad alternator. Well, I hooked up booster cables, charged the battery, and drove it 20 miles till it went dead, and rehooked the booster cables and drove it the rest of the way home, approximately a 45-mile trip. Well, I took it apart, and it wasn't easy, mind you, putting that alternator in that sucker. But when I went to put it back together and I hooked the battery up, all I got now is when I put the key in the ignition, the horn goes off steady, and it will not start. I called the lady back, and she says, well, okay, I forgot to tell you, if you go to disturb or unhook the battery, you got to switch this toggle switch off under the dash some kind of security system. But I have already upset the apple cart, and I've tried everything from standing on my ears.
Can I just have you on the show every week just to tell your story? Because this is good.
This is great.
This is awesome. But I don't like your problem.
Why? I hope I don't have that many problems. I gotta call you.
So the aforementioned toggle switch is scarier than heck on a used vehicle of that era. What the toggle switch was for was did she say that was to bypass an alarm system that was on the vehicle?
Yeah, it's some kind of anti-theft system, and I really can't tell if it was factory or added on later. It kind of looks like it might have been added in.
I have a hunch, that it was.
My hunch is added
Google,
on. It's added
whatever,
in later. But we have seen people use some bypass modules and do some things to try to cheat the factory system if it failed and they didn't want to, try to make it all work again.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a possibility. But are you anywhere near a store or a shop or somewhere where they install remote starts and that sort of thing?
Well, I wouldn't know that. I have never had one put in or had this problem to investigate whether I am near a shop.
Exactly. Well, I would, if it was mine, the first thing I would probably be doing is getting up underneath there and finding anything that's non-factory from that alarm system or security system, if that's what it is, and I would get rid of it. I would pull it out and get everything back to factory plug-ins. If there was any factory wires cut, I would put them back together again and put this thing back to factory. Now, if it wasn't aftermarket and you don't find extra modules zip-tied up underneath there and things like that, or maybe even hanging because they never zip-tied them, then I would get a technician involved because somebody may have bypassed a factory security system with a workaround, and you're removing it could disable the vehicle completely.
Mm-hmm.
But when you say what you're saying, I think there's an aftermarket system in there that just should be stripped out of it, put away, burned up, and put it back to factory. And like in our local market, I would call my friends like at Audio Playground. They install and sell remote starts. They got experts there that work on this stuff all the time, and they could look at it. But if you can't get it there, then you got to start taking matters into your own hands.
Right. Yeah. What do you do then? You'd put it on.
You'd have to tow it,
Yeah.
and that's expensive. So that's where you got to start doing a little more looking yourself. And you talked about standing on your. He might be standing on his ears to get up underneath there and look to see what he's got to see.
There goes Steve. He's on his way. He's
Yeah.
going to get it fixed. Good luck, Steve.
Oh, I feel for him.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to David. You're on the End of the Hood Show. David, what can we do for you?
Yeah, I have a 2000 Silverado C71. It's been it's an alternative fuel vehicle. It also runs on propane, but it has been the tank has been removed, and I have problems with it from time to time with the fuel management system. I was wondering if you guys knew anybody that I could take my truck to and have them just completely remove all of it.
I'm not going to throw a name out there because I do have a hunch that if there's someone that is in the business and they don't mind putting in the LS conversions, doing a conversion into a hot rod, a tuning shop that does dyno tuning on cars like this where people have done, because that's an LS-based engine and done an LS swap, they could look at that and say, okay, you've got this regulator right here. You've got this bypass valve right here. We've got this stuff here. Okay, if I get rid of that, I need to get some A-end fittings, and I need to plumb from here to here and then get the vehicle back to just a straight gas setup and get rid of that other stuff. That's the type of person I would be looking for.
So you don't necessarily need a person that can do this, but if they can swap out the engine,
they
they'll
would
know
completely
what they
understand
need
what it takes to get that fuel. In that era, you've got a system that had a dual feed on the fuel. There was a pressure and return line. I think in 03 they went to a single line system, but they would have to look at how they integrated that with that conversion kit, that propane conversion kit. Is it how How long has it been disabled? Been removed?
I have no clue. I bought the truck this way.
Gotcha. Did you know that when you bought it?
Oh yeah, I
Okay.
knew that it had.
So you knew there might be a challenge at some point to figure out at that if something happened.
Well, the biggest problem is from time to time, I hit the damn button for the propane, and then it takes me a while to figure out the fuel management system box to get it
I know.
back to gasoline.
I think if you find that person that was willing to help you, you could probably go to a self-service yard in your area and find a 99, 2000, 2001, 2002 Silverado, Sierra, Tahoe, Yukon with a 5.3 and get the non-propane components.
Right.
And switch over probably that complete upper intake plenum and all those things and reconnect your fuel lines back to that fuel tank and just get rid of that other stuff and just make it a straight through system. That's what I'd be doing.
David, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Matt. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Matt, what can we do for you?
Well, a buddy of mine had a 2015 Dually Duramax diesel pickup, and he was driving down the road with the trailer, and it started white smoking out of the back and shaking, and he didn't pull over until he got to Sioux Falls, which is about 10 miles away, and he didn't shut it off right when he started smoking. And so now he's got a engine problem. We took it to the dealer, and they wanted like $23,000 to put a rebuilt motor in it, but it wouldn't have a warranty because the emissions have been deleted. So now we're trying to figure out what we can do for him, and the new pickups are so ridiculously priced. And
what did it do? You know what it did to the motor?
No, not yet. I mean, it's got a bunch of air coming out of the breather when you take the oil. I mean, when you take the oil cap off where you put the oil in.
So it's pumping compression somewhere it shouldn't be.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah. So that, you know, what you're up against right now is something that I will often remind people about when they tell me they're going to buy a diesel truck. I said, you better make sure you need a diesel truck before you invest in one. Now, this is just a whole other subject because you brought it up. Because the margin for error is small and the expense to repair is through the roof.
Right.
And especially on this modern stuff. The availability of product and the cost to do these things has went through the roof. Our used engines that we would sell out of something that had 70,000 miles on it used to be $4,000. Now they're $10,000. It's just the demand has just went crazy because the price of the trucks have gotten so high. And when you put the delete devices on them, defeat devices for the emissions, those sort of things, your manufacturer is going to use that in 5 seconds to run from the truck.
Mm-hmm.
A remanufactured engine company will use that to run from the truck because you've introduced something that they know has adjustable control, and they just aren't going to be signing up to be part of that game. It makes it very difficult for us selling used product, getting people to tell the truth about what's going on. Because when you sell a good running item and then all of a sudden, 6 months later it comes back and it's got a piston scored, what happened? I do like the idea of getting a complete used engine out of another vehicle because even though, like us and others, they won't warranty the fuel injectors or the turbo, you can have it all operational because if you had a high-pressure pump burn up or something like that in one of those late-model diesels, it starts running metal through the system. And that metal gets into that fuel system, that metal gets into the oil system. It tears up stuff really quick. And so there were many people that'll buy a remanufactured long block, and then they'll put all their components back on it, and they introduce the problem right back into the new engine. And so telling you a lot of things that are a little scary, but it might be an option to look for a complete used engine to put in there in somewhere like Car Dash Part or call a professional recycler.
Matt, thanks very much for the call. If you're on hold waiting to talk to us, hang out. We'll get your call after the show. That'll do it for this hour of the Under the Hood Show. Thanks very much for listening. We'll see you next week. the after show. We're trying to figure some stuff out here.
Yeah,
before
I got a phone number.
Callers, stay right where you are.
Yeah, so let me.
We're gonna take 1 second here.
Yeah, I'm just gonna call somebody. Here.
You should go. You should.
No, I'm gonna do it right here.
No, don't. No,
Why?
because what if he's super mad at us
He's
and
not
he
super
starts?
mad at us.
No. What?
He's not super mad
This
at
is a
us.
terrible idea. I
No,
don't like
I
this
love
idea.
terrible ideas.
I don't like that.
I love letting people see it raw. Hey, John, how you doing? Great. This is Shannon show right now, and we're live on YouTube. And Chris is chastising me for calling you on the cell phone while we're doing this.
on. Yeah.
But I don't care. We're cutting it live. But Russ had something come up this morning, and he's not able to do the link that he was going to set up. Is it okay if we postpone this interview?
He's saying no.
Okay,
Probably
because
don't.
we want Russ to
hate
be
you
involved with
guys.
this, and we also want to test this equipment that we've got to put you up on the pretty face and right on the board here, and so we don't want to compromise.
Shannon is talking to John Dodson from Universal Technical Institute, who was going to be part of the studio here on video.
Okay,
and
let's
live.
do that. We'll hopefully everything's okay with Russ here, and we'll get you back, and we'll set up another time.
But
Okay.
we didn't want to do it without Russ because he set this whole system up,
Oh,
and
great to talk to
if
you
it
too.
worked, it would be a bummer, and if it doesn't, we wouldn't be able to fix it. So that's what you're listening live to the Under the Hood show.
That wasn't so
figuring things
bad,
out
was
as-
it?
No, it was all right. We can take some calls now.
That was John Dodson from UTI. He's involved in the leadership at UTI, United Technical Institute.
Universal
Technical. That's what I did. It's right there. That's what I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Universal Technical Institute, UTI.edu. And they're a partner of ours with the hoodie giveaways, and they've got their campuses all across the country for learning specific technical skills, automotive, marine, welding, and we were going to get him on and interview him on a live video link. And with Russ not being here this morning, it's just not right.
If it hadn't worked, we'd been lost, and if it had worked, Russ would have missed it.
Yeah, I want Russ to be involved. I mean, that guy pours blood, sweat, and tears into figuring out how this stuff works in here just for the luxury of me to show up and just to talk. And this morning I had to get coached to go through it, and that's good. I've done it a few times now, but I need to do it serious and keep notes. I still got to do that because I got to get my parents up here. We're going to do an interview
That's
with
right.
them. I got to get that done.
Okay. Do it
but,
today. Go call, text them.
Do it
Tell
just
them
right
in
today?
20 minutes, yeah.
Be
They're
up
coming
here? I don't think that's going to work.
Let's talk to Colin. Colin, you're on the Under the Hood show. What can we do for you?
Hey there, guys. Thanks for taking my call. So I have an 85 K20 Silverado, so four-wheel drive with the SM465 transmission. It's a plow truck as well. I finally got around to changing the clutch because it started just slipping so bad I could hardly drive it up on the blocks anymore. And so got everything out and made me wish it was a two-wheel drive when I was doing that. Cause,
That
man, is there a
transmission
lot of
weighs
stuff
about
in the way. But
20,000
anyway.
pounds.
Yes, and I had an interesting system doing it, but it came right out, and right away, I could even see without taking the pressure plate off, there was so much clutch dust in there, and I knew it was completely trash. But to my surprise, I take the pressure plate off. It actually had a 6-puck clutch, which I found very odd. Now, is that something people normally do on a plow truck so they can just slam it into gear every time? Or I've never seen that.
I don't even know what that means.
My
What does that
hunch
mean?
is that somebody did that because they could at some point. You got to the part and you're like, okay, what's good, better, best? And somebody had extra money and said, put the best thing you can find in there because otherwise there's no great reason to spend that extra money.
Right. That totally answered my question. Well, I was wondering why I sucked at driving the thing, and I'm like, I just can't drive this thing smoothly. Well, I figured out why, because it was jerkier than heck when I would try driving it. But the other thing is
Chris,
there was no pilot bearing or bushing.
Colin, just 1 second here. For Chris, normally on a clutch like that, they've got like fingers that kind of hold things together, and there's contact areas on the clutch that are going in and out. This has been modified with an aftermarket setup that has additional surface area for heavier applications, heavier adhesion. But it also makes it more difficult to operate and not as user friendly a lot of times.
Okay.
So hey, what was the condition of like your pressure plate and your was it burned up?
Oh, horrible. Yeah, it was metal on metal.
Okay, and so you need a flywheel, or at least got to get it turned and stuff too?
I did get it turned, yes. And I got the whole new clutch kit. I just went with a normal, organic, normal clutch, no pucks or anything, just a smooth surface. But when I looked in there, there was no pilot bearing or bushing, which kind of concerned me. I read that they come with a bushing, so I don't know if it got burned up in there and just turned into metal dust. But I did pound in the new pilot bearing, and it appears to fit, except it doesn't quite go flush with the crank. But I read that it's not supposed to, so I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that.
I think you're okay. Was the collar, the sleeve on the front of the transmission still in good shape and everything?
Yeah, it didn't look like it had rubbed on anything, but I was just surprised that there was nothing there.
Yeah, that is, I don't do enough of that stuff anymore. It seems odd to me. Maybe there's somebody listening and say, no, when you do that, you don't add that. My hunch is you always had to have that on that setup, because that's still a mechanical clutch fork, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know how that would work well otherwise. I just think
it explains why it kind of drove goofy before. So.
Colin, I think you are going to be extremely satisfied with your clutch when you get this back together.
I
hope so. It's going to be worth the work, hopefully.
Or you're still going to be terrible and you're just not good at it. What if he's just like, it was me?
Is this truck two-tone in color?
No, it's all white, and it's got a big logo for a company on the side that I bought it from.
All right, I was just trying to figure out what you got going on here. K20, a big old solid axle truck, front axle truck. That's a snowplow right there.
Yep.
Colin, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. What if we're right? What if he gets it fixed and they're like, it was fine. It was you wrecked it.
I don't think he did.
Okay.
All right. I don't think he did.
And would you tell Russ that next time we're talking about my car? I didn't break my car. It was braking. I helped it maybe, but
I don't think I can modify that situation.
You just stay out of that one.
It is what it is. I don't think I can help.
Let's talk to Tom. Tom, you're on the Under the Hood show. What can we do for you?
I'm calling for my son. Got a 2015, I believe, GMC Terrain. He lives out in the boonies, but he doesn't want to drive the car into the shop, because then if it doesn't make it to the shop, he has to get a tow. It runs fine on the highway, but when you're at idle or just driving at a low speed, it's like starved for gas. So you can push on the pedal, but it doesn't speed up, or it kind of goes up and off,
Is this the 2.4 liter engine?
I'm not sure. All I know is it's white and has 4 tires.
Oh, you know what? That's all the options you need right there. we can go from there. Here's what we need to find out. And I think I can assume a few of these answers, but we need to find out, does he have any, or maybe you know this, does he have any warning lights or check engine lights or anything on the dash?
No.
He does not. All right.
No.
I think that's a positive thing, because if he was getting into some of the problems that these engines can have if it is a 2.4 liter, you're most of the time going to get a check engine light because of timing being off or just spark knock or different things that are going to be going off with the emission system. And so if he doesn't have any check engine light on, now we're talking about base things, like it's starving for fuel with maybe a fuel pump that's going out, something like that. How far has he got to go to get to the shop?
About 50 miles.
Wow, you're testing me.
That's yeah.
I was hoping you'd say 10.
All kidding aside,
Well,
now I get why he doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, that's a long ways to be risking it, and then knowing the tow is the other option. How when it started doing this,
I was thinking about running up and following him into the shop. Do we start with the fuel filters or anything?
Well, I would look at the inline fuel filter, and I would check, at that Schrader valve that's on the fuel rail to see if you have good fuel pressure. It's never actually died though, correct?
Correct.
God, it's hard to believe it doesn't have a check engine light of some sort on the way
Right.
what you're saying it's acting. If it's bucking like that and stuff, it'd be very unusual for it not to have some sort of code that you could read to at least tell you what system to look at.
It'd be interesting to see on startup, is the check engine light work?
Well, it wouldn't start if it wasn't cycling
Right.
the key.
Yeah.
It wouldn't even start if it wasn't cycling that light. I got a hunch it's a fuel problem.
Sure seems like it.
And I would get under the hood and check all the wiring, battery, make sure he's got a good, fresh, well-tested battery so that everything's got a solid 12 volts. Because with these modern systems, if the voltage starts getting fluctuated or voltage gets low, check battery connections, check that stuff. These are things that you can check without spending any money, other than maybe you might have to buy a battery. But that can make one run just horribly, but you'd still sometimes get that check engine light popping on. But I would follow him, and if you do have to give it a tow, make sure you hook on to the solid part of the subframe and just go really slow. You're not supposed to tow him hardly at all, but if you go really slow, you should be okay. And if it'll start and even idle a little bit, let it idle in neutral, so at least you keep the hydraulic pump of the transmission running.
Okay.
So that you're able to keep fluid moving through it, and then just kind of slowly make your way along. But my hunch is it's going to hang in there and run, but I'm with you on your worry.
Tom, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. Did you hear me say it sounds like, yeah? Like I agreed with you? You said it sounds like a fuel problem. Yeah, it sounds like that to me, too. Yeah, I was there for you. I was your second opinion. Let's go to Wisconsin and talk to Devlin. You're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Hey, how's it going?
Fantastic.
So I have a couple questions about my 01 Toyota Tundra.
Okay.
Fire away.
It's a Wisconsin truck, so it's kind of rusty underneath, but not as bad as the other Tundras around my area. But I got it from my uncle. He had gotten the front left brake line done from a shop, and now I'm starting to have an issue where, like, early in the morning when I, drive to work and I step on the brakes and stuff, slow down, it, like, vibrates really, really bad. And on bumps, my brake light, like, on the cluster, it'll, like, blink and flash, but it's only when, like, I hit bumps. It's weird. I was asking if, I was going to ask if these Toyota Tundras have something funky with the master cylinder.
Not anything that's super unique that I'm aware of, and the vibration could be a result of the brake line that was bad, that it overheated the rotor and put some warping into that. You didn't put new brake rotors on or anything, did you?
No, I don't think so, but I kind of figured, because other people told me, like, yeah, it's vibrating when you press on the brake. It could be warped rotor.
Yeah, if you can feel it in your pedal when you step on the brake a little bit and you just know it. You can feel it. It's in the pedal. That's typically what happens is when that brake line was bad and it couldn't relieve the pressure, it overheated that brake and it warped that metal. And
happens quick,
a lot.
and it happens.
It happens a lot. And then it'll happen just with over braking on some of the standard brakes on vehicles. I would recommend that you have that inspected, because that's probably what it is. Sometimes on the trucks there's enough meat left that people will still turn rotors and use the lathe on them to get them smoothed out. We've seen a little more of that actually lately with the supply and materials costing so much more.
Right.
People have looked into it more, but for every time you do that and get it thinner, it makes it that much prone to warpage again, because you've taken away a lot of the material. But my hunch is that you've got a warp situation. The light coming on, is that red light or a yellow light?
It's a red, brake light. My e-brake isn't on.
Just going to ask about that. Make sure that you don't have a hair trigger on an e-brake switch. We've seen that before, where that emergency brake, either handle or pedal, depending on how the vehicle's set up, it doesn't stay up all the way because of a bad spring or something, and then it rides on the switch just enough to trigger that light on and off. That's something that can happen. Otherwise,
I made sure that it was.
Yeah, otherwise I'd be looking at the sensor that's on the brake master cylinder I would be opening up that brake master cylinder itself to make sure that there's not, with an 01 and that system got opened a little bit, is there contamination that got into the master cylinder itself and the brake fluid, and it's caused a buildup, and then that sensor is not able to work quite like it's supposed to, and it's triggering back and forth because there's just crud on it. You might just clean that system out, pull the sensor out, clean it up a little bit, and see if that helps with your problem. Just do some physical things first, and then go from there.
Does that help you out there?
Yeah.
Thanks very much for the call. Good luck.
Thanks, Devlin.
And that was a good, the beginning of that call made sense to a lot of people. It might not have made sense to everyone, but when he says, I have a 2001 Toyota Tundra, there is rust, but not Wisconsin rust on those things.
I was expecting this call to be about, it has rust, but not to the point where Toyota bought it back.
Right.
Or or my frame is rusted, and what do I do?
So that, and he jumped right out in front of that. No, it's not one of those, but it does have a little rust.
Kind of like saying in about 5th grade that, I'm not the fastest runner in the class, but I'm not the slowest either.
Right, exactly. I'm not going to win any races, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, I'm going to. Yeah, there's a difference between me and the other ones.
Right. All right, that'll do it, I think, for the after show, huh?
Yeah, I think we're getting close here. I say some prayers for Russ there. He's just having a little bit of discomfort, and he was getting some things checked out, and so all will be well with him, we pray, and we'll be hearing from him soon, I think. We'll have an interview set up that we put off now for today.
Yep.
With John Dodson from UTI, Universal Technical Institute, uti.edu. Good friends of ours.
And Trucker Joe checked in on the chat, said he's on his way to SEMA.
Oh, you know what? I'm supposed to be out there, but I had some things here that I had to stay for. I'll be out there the next years because of my connections with.
You want me to go? I mean,
I could have. I'm seeing the pictures.
I know it.
And everybody's putting out their photos, and it's good to see SEMA back because that they had a little hiatus with COVID there for a year, and they're building that back up, and which doesn't take much. I had one person I was texting with that was going out there, and I didn't get right away what he was talking about, but I was asking him if he could meet somebody for me. They could have a little meeting and talk.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Are you going to be out of town?" He said, "I'm going to see Mama," and I'm like. Oh, he's going. Maybe his wife lives out there. Or maybe maybe it's his mom or whatever. But no, he called SEMA Mama.
Okay. Yeah.
He's gonna own him for a week.
Here's what's getting to me. We've been to SEMA as a show. We went a few years ago,
and we still talk about it way too much for how long it's been.
It was great. It was amazing. But you gotta. There's a couple years there that it's short. You could compress that time a little bit.
Yeah.
But since we went out there, I've started to care more about the aftermarket.
So you would be more interested now?
Yeah. Before I went out there and went, oh look, they have all this stuff. Wow, neat. Now I'm in a situation where I'm like, oh, what does that do? I could use. You know what I mean? I'm into
and they
that.
have. I'm curious to see. They actually are embracing, and they have a section that'll be building and set aside for the electric aftermarket. And so I think they know they have to do that, and so they're embracing that. And I'm curious to see how quickly that builds and what builders come on the scene specifically in that arena.
Yeah,
with the electric vehicle stuff.
All right, that'll do it for this week. Until next time, you can
make sure and get out and vote.
That's right.
Just vote. I'm not going to tell you how to vote. Mm-hmm. Just get out and vote.
Good point. And I'll say this.
Can I tell them how to vote? No.
Go
vote.
Listen,
go vote.
Here's the thing. No matter what you think about the candidates or the process, that lady who's asking you to sign the book, it's not her fault.
Just like the lady at the gas station or the guy at the gas station.
Yes.
It's not their fault that the price of gas is what it is. And they don't get paid any more or any less when the price of gas goes up.
That's right. They know. They're those.
Just be kind.
That's it. That's how we should end every show. Be kind. Thanks, everybody.